truth will not be silenced. The show that allows people to be seen, to be heard, and to be human. I'm your host, Melissa Woodfork White. In today's episode, we will talk about logistics, industry, employment, transportation with my husband, Nathan Whyte. Sharing our stories allows us to encourage, inspire, motivate, uplift, and help people. There will be a special surprise at the end of the show. Be sure to listen all the way through for the details. Our returning special guest today is my husband, my honey, Nathan Whyte, who is happily married to me, his loving wife. Nathan is a transportation, logistics, and supply chain executive. He was born and raised in England. He is a proud graduate of Forest Hill Boys School in London, Sydenham College in London, and Birmingham University in Birmingham. Nathan holds multiple certifications in logistics and transportation, supply chain worldwide. He has over 33 years in the workforce, bringing forth his expertise in business and logistics. He is the co-founder and owner of White Warehouse Connection, LLC, providing the best business and education products and services. Nathan is going to share with us about logistics industry employment for transportation. Hi, Nathan. Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
All right, let's go ahead and get right to our first question. How did you become a transportation, logistics, and supply chain executive?
Well, I started out in the Royal Mail in London. I was in the administration and they moved me into the facilities and transportation department. I worked up from there and I went to another business. I went in the busing industry, which is public transportation, and I moved from there into management. And obviously this is after doing my schooling. And from that point on, I went into the freight transportation industry, which is more trucking, where I then went to university and gathered other certifications, moving forward into a more executive role, you know, a higher level of transportation with all that's involved.
Tell us about some of the examples as you move through your career from beginning in transportation and logistics to the current.
Well, the first thing was in the transportation side of things, it was more admin work, to be honest with you. It was dealing with customers, looking at certain financial aspects. I started off there, then I went into supervision, which was managing drivers. Then I went up to having a supervision of a whole site, a whole depot, as we'd call it. And that involved everything: finances, recruitment, business decisions, forecasting, analytics, metrics, everything to do with running the business side of things. And then we always had corporate offices where we had to report back to, and we had meetings every so often, you know, to make business decisions, how we were going to move the business forward.
All right. Can you tell us some of your experiences that you had working in London, Manchester, and in Warsaw?
London, busy, very fast. The equivalent of London, I could really say in the US, I'd have to say would be New York. That's the closest thing I can, from my experience, I can put it to. It's very fast. You have to think fast, you have to think on your feet fast, and you have to take proactive approach in everything.
And who did you work for when you were in London?
I worked for the Royal Mail. The Royal Mail, it was Royal Mail London Western Rathbone Place, which is, it no longer has an admin centre there from what I've heard, but it did then. There were the whole of London's business entity, which was West One, and there was another office that we used to call West Central, which is not so far away. But we dealt with the whole postcode of West One, which is a big, that's all of Oxford Street, all the places where the tourists.
The Parliament?
No, not Parliament.
Not Parliament.
But Oxford Street and around there,
okay.
Going so far up Baker Street and areas of that, where the old US Embassy used to be at Grosvenor Square. That was a part of our kind of jurisdiction as well.
And then in Manchester?
Manchester, Greater Manchester Buses. That then became First Bus. And then I went to Parcelnet, which was a German company. It was owned by a German company, which is Otto in Germany. And those were the two main ones in Greater Manchester.
So you went from the Royal Mail to transporting mail to passenger transport in Manchester. Can you tell us about some of those experiences?
Passenger transport is very different. It's people, and people, you know, they basically walk themselves on a piece of transportation, and they're all different, you know, and plus they talk back. They have a voice where freight does not. So you have different sort of logistical issues to contend with. There's more legal side of things in that respect, if there's an accident on the road and so on and so forth. But that's the main difference is one's alive, one isn't. Mm-hmm. And there's certain different levels of regulatory safety that's also involved.
All right. And you said you also work for Parcelnet?
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Yeah. Parcelnet is very similar to the Royal Mail, but it's basically customers. You're dealing with customer orders. So if they order something online, Parcelnet, where I was based, and there was other distribution centers all over the country, but where I was based, we dealt with because we were logistically based in Manchester, well, Greater Manchester Haywood Distribution Centre. We could hit every part of the country. We could go to Scotland, we could go to London and to the South Coast, and east and west of the country, say as far as, you know, Peterborough and beyond. You could go to near where we had a site which was Tetford, which is near where the US Air Base is, Milton Hall, or Lakenheath. It's around the corner from Lakenheath. So the air base, but we could hit every area of the country from where we was located at, and we dealt with a lot of high volume retail product.
All right, and tell us about your experience in Warsaw and the companies that you work for there.
Yeah, that was DHL Supply Chain. DHL Supply Chain is very big. The one I worked for was on a retail contract, which you know as in the US is TJ Maxx. But before I got into DHL, I had to go in there via a very, very good contract agency, and they sent me into different businesses. Some of it was retail, some of it was engineering parts like Jaguar Land Rover, some of it was pharmaceuticals, and being in the office there as well. So it kind of like built up to me getting a position at DHL Supply Chain.
And didn't you also work for TK Maxx, or you did the contract for TK Maxx?
The DHL worked on a contract.
Okay, explain that.
Right, so working on a contract, but you're the vendor and you supply transportation for that particular contract. And most big companies or big entities, they don't do internal transportation themselves. They use a vendor. And in the US, you could say Expo is one. Trying to think of another one. DHL to a smaller scale is another one. And then you have various smaller trucking entities who have a large enough fleet to take on contracts. One of them is in Georgia, that Premier Transportation is one. And then there's various other ones, but they do all sorts of different things. They specialize in specific areas, you know, of concern.
So what you're saying, for those of you that are not familiar with this industry, is that Nathan went to college and university to get his degree in logistics and supply chain. And then he received multiple certifications, including the various driver's license. Talk about those, honey, for different passenger and freight and so forth, the certifications.
Yeah, I have all my certifications in the UK for passenger and for freight, which is trucking. I have all those licenses. I can drive any of them. So if in the business that I'm in, maybe 20 years ago, if not more, especially more so in the UK, if you had, every manager had to have those licenses just in case of strike action, in industrial unrest, so you'd be able to go in and help out where necessary. So I also have those certifications in the US as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have them over here now. So even though I don't really have to use them, I still have them. It's beneficial to have them.
Yes. Can you tell us about, now we're transitioning from the UK into the United States with you being an executive in transportation, logistics, and supply chain. Without giving us the names, can you tell us about the transportation part that you headed?
In the US, I've been a transportation director. Okay, and then that involved working with state departments, some on a federal level, some which is just state only. You had to know all the regulations, the laws, and you had to run them to a standard which is very high, especially when you're dealing with safety. You could be audited at any time, and you was held to book for how you ran the business side of things. Mm-hmm. I tend to run everything as a business, and I use metrics, and I use say like past analysis on where finances are going, how the business is growing, if it's developing, and how to push that business forward. We use forecasting as well. So it's kind of like you have to keep your eyes on certain things, and once you've done it long enough, when things are not balancing, you tend to catch it very quickly, and you start to make those corrections immediately. You have to be prepared to make decisive action quickly, because if you get behind in an area, it's very hard to catch up, especially when you're at director level. You've got a lot of work to do, and it's basically watching the money, watching safety, and watching all the other aspects, and making sure the staff are highly motivated, highly trained, and developing staff to the next level. That's what kind of directorship's about.
So tell us about thank you, honey. Tell us about some of your experiences managing the different people that you were in charge of that worked underneath you. Talk about those different areas. You mentioned already training, drivers, and then you also had dispatchers. You've had, what's that other one? That other position that supports the dispatchers? Supervisors, but there was another one.
You have senior managers. Okay.
Manager. I don't want to say names, but if I said this person's name started with a T, what was their position?
That person was
routing specialist.
Yeah, the routing specialist.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Those positions that are managed, that you are over.
Yeah, it's basically making sure that the routes are routed adequately. There's adequate transportation on those routes, and they're efficient. Mm-hmm. And they run to time, and there's accountability on them. They have to be safe. They have to be workable. Mm-hmm. As well. They have to be fuel efficient, and they've basically got time frames. As they've got time frames to meet. And the dispatchers. The dispatchers dealt with all the customers, basically. They were like a call center as well, and they gave out directions to drivers and gave extra routes to drivers, or whatever the case may be. They made sure that if there was any breakdowns and stuff like this, they helped to assess that. Even though in accident situations, they never went out to them. I always did, but it's kind of like, it was like an admin center. Mm-hmm. And plus a call center as well.
And then your supervisors.
The supervisors kind of like watched over the drivers more. Mm-hmm. than they kind of like dealt with more disciplinary and professional conduct and so on, and the brand, making sure that staff were kind of like in line to what the brand image should look like, and that the professionalism, how to make sure that how to diffuse situations, especially when you're dealing with a customer that was highly vocal, and the choice of words could have been a little bit better, but it's kind of like bringing it down to a level where you basically listen and interact, but where you're understanding what they're trying to tell you at times and bringing out the best solution for the customer as well as the business as a whole.
And then what about for trainers, and being that all drivers had to be DPS, Department of Public Safety certified? I mean, what is it on their license? It's called?
Well, depending on what
CDL or
CDL is just a commercial driver's license. There's different types of commercial drivers. So you have one for, you have the A, which is tractor and trailer, and you have the B, which is what they call in US like a straight truck over 26,000 pounds. And you can have it on the bus, or you can have it on a standard box truck. But depending if you're going into transit busing or the school bus, if you're going into school bus, you will need to have the Department of Public Safety certification in order to drive a school bus in the state of Arizona.
And your trainers were the ones that were training incoming and then recertifying and things like that. What exactly were they doing?
Well, all the trainers did was train people to actually drive a bus, which I can also do. You train them to drive a bus.
Well, we know that. That's why you were the director.
Train them to drive a bus, but all the specific paperwork that needs to be sent off once they've passed their test and they've done all the other aspects, first aid and all the other aspects you have to have, I used to send it off to DPS. DPS used to contact me. I was the main contact between DPS and the main contact of dealing with setting up the actual testing with the third-party tester, which is from the Department of Transport. The AZO, the Arizona Department of Transportation. They have their examiners.
So tell us about that and drivers with getting their certification and maintaining the requirements for maintaining, and then any violations.
Maintaining them is just basically they have in-service training on the latest regulations that are going about and updates and so on and so forth. They have regular training. It's going over what they already know, what DPS standards may change, and just keeping them aware of what it is they're doing and not doing on the road. I mean, I can see over those sort of things because I used to have tracking metrics. I had GPS. I can see where you're parked. I can see what you're not doing. I can see what you are with. And so it's basically.
So there's rules and regulations that they have to follow to maintain their DPS certification to be for passenger transport. All right. Thank you so much, Nathan. Let's move on to another question. What are the requirements to being employed in the logistics industry for transportation?
It depends. If it's road, if you want to be a driver, you need to have your commercial license. You need to be tested by the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. You have to pass that testing. You'll be drug screened. And usually you're drug screened every 2 years. You have random drug testing. You have to maintain your, when I say drug testing, I'd say a mandatory drug test is probably once every 12 months. You have your random drug testing as well. You could be pulled out at any time with drug testing. You also have to have your, it's like a medical certification. You have it's a card you carry.
So it's like a physical?
Yeah, it's a physical.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's every 2 years. You have to actually go and maintain your physical certification every single 2 years because it will run out and they will take your CDL off, you're suspended. So
I noticed that you said here it's every 2 years, but in the UK it was every year?
No.
So how was it? Was it every 2 years?
No.
How often did you have to do it in the UK versus the US?
You didn't. Once you pass, for instance, if you get your commercial license at 21, okay, that's when I got mine, 21. I didn't have to go for another medical until I was 45.
Oh, okay. So in the US, they have to go every 2 years.
In the UK, once you hit 45, it's every 5 years after.
Why do you think that is, based on your expertise and then working in both countries?
I think the rules in the UK are a little bit more stringent. They're very, very stringent. I've seen some regulator in the US where someone will go for a physical, and I'd know for certain you're not going to get, if that was in the UK, you wouldn't pass a physical. There's no way.
Like, give us an example of that.
I guess it's different aspects. The testing is kind of similar.
No, I want you to give me an example. Is this physical fitness? Is
it's
this
physical
weight?
Fitness.
Is this endurance? What is this?
With physical fitness and weight. There's no way you're gonna, because they'll do certain tests on you over there. Unlike in the US, you go for your physical, you get your certification, and that's it. And then that's it. Your license carries on. It doesn't work like that in the UK. You go to a doctor, the doctor fills in your certification, and the doctor sends it off to the Department of Transport. You don't get to ask the doctor no questions. He does the physical. He doesn't give you no answers, and then he sends it off. And you don't know what he's put on that form, what his findings are. So you won't know if your physical is going to come back.
Well, you will if you're healthy and fit and so forth.
Well, not necessarily.
Really?
Something might come
underlying conditions.
Well, yeah, he may find something that may kind of like hinder you, and he may ask you a question: Have you this? Have you that? Have you this, that, and the other? And he may send your physical report off, basically, with some queries, and then what will happen is the Department of Transport will get in contact with you and say, hey, we're not going to give you your license. We're going to hold it or suspend it for a bit until you come to our physical center for extra examination. And that's when it's like going to a DOT physical center.
So you're saying here they get to fill out their forms?
No. The doctor does.
Explain it.
Right. He does it all. Right. When you go for a physical, he does all of that.
So they go to the doctor.
Yeah.
But the doctor gives them the paperwork, and then they submit the paperwork.
Right.
Okay.
Right. When you go,
I just need to be clear.
Right. When you go for a physical in the US, right, and you sit in front of the doctor, he's filling in all the paperwork for it. If he's happy, he gives you a certificate. Okay. You just get the certificate and you carry that around for 2 years. When you go for a physical in Britain, for instance, and that's to get your license renewed. Remember, it's not just a physical every 2 years. It's to get your whole license renewed. Now, so your physical, when you go for that physical, your license will only last for another 5 years. And then when your license is going to run out, this is in Europe, this is in Britain, for instance, your license is going to run out. They'll send you for another physical in 5 years. You have to have that physical, or you will lose your license straight off the bat.
Okay, so I'm confused. So if I heard you correctly, the first time you said you went for a physical was when you first got your license at 21, and then you didn't have to do another one to 45.
That's right.
But now you're saying that you do have to do one every time your license run out. I'm confused, honey.
When you're 45, at 45, you have to do one every 5 years.
Okay,
after.
that's it.
So every
yes,
5
I got
years
you.
After, you have to do it. When you hit 45 in Britain, you have to do a physical
every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
I got
if you don't do your physical every 5 years,
you can lose your license.
And there's another part of that, the certification part, the training part. You have to do 35 hours of training in a 5-year period to get a card, which is called your professional driver competence card. If you don't have that and that runs out, your license will be suspended. There's a lot more regulations over there than there is, I'd say, over here in retrospect.
And you're saying that based off your experience at working in both countries. So I wanted to make sure that I had this correct, is that one of the major differences between getting your license in transportation in Britain versus getting it in the United States, or most people might say the UK, is that you don't get to take your paperwork. They don't just give you your paperwork. They send it off to the Department of Transportation, and you don't know which way it's going to go or which way. Whereas here in the United States, they just give it right to you, and then that's it. I got it.
Yeah, if you pass a physical, there's your paperwork. You carry that for 2 years around. You get a little card. You carry that around.
Not as stringent.
Yeah.
I got it.
You know, ain't like that. They tell you to go and do this, stand on the scale, do it, blah 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 blah, and then they fill in this paperwork, and then they say thank you, goodbye. That's it.
Okay.
And you won't know, because what will happen is, once the Department of Transport gets that paperwork, you will know if you've passed your physicals, a new license, a new physical card will come through your door. If it doesn't, you'll get a letter.
All right. So let's still on the same question about the requirements. So we learned that you can go to college and get a degree in transportation, logistics, and supply chain.
Right.
But we also learned that you don't have to have one to get your driver's license or certification to drive in the transportation industry. They just have to go for training. Is that right, honey?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, tell me about that.
That's different.
Okay.
The degrees are to do with a management level. But that's not driving at all. That's kind of like managing the operation at a higher level. The driving side of aspect of it is more high school, and you need to just have a physical license that you're trained to get. It's like having doing training for your car, but it's just bigger with more moving parts, more things to check.
So how long is that training? If they just want to be a driver, whether a passenger driver, just give us a roundabout number, or a truck driver, a freight driver is what you call it.
Could be about 6 weeks. You have to do is what I call, you have to go down to your local DOT and do like a test. Is there like a knowledge test? You get a book.
Is it one test, 2 tests? How many tests is it?
It all depends on what it is you're going for.
Okay.
There's a standard one which covers all commercial vehicles, but depending on what it is you're doing, if you're doing passenger, you'll do a test which is for commercial vehicles, and then you'll have the passenger endorsement test. Now, if you want to do school bus, you have to have the school bus endorsement as well as the passenger test. Now, if you're looking at the trucking side, to driving a truck, depending on what class of truck you're driving, you might want to do hazmat. That's what in Britain it would be called the ADR, carriage of dangerous goods by road, which is ADR. It's the same thing. You might want hazmat. You might want doubles and triples over here. You're pulling multiple trailers, 2 trailers or 3 trailers. There's different tests for different things. So it gives you different certifications on your particular license. Where the difference is in, especially Britain, if you want to pull any hazmat around in a trailer, in a tractor trailer, you have to go and sit a course, which is about a week. They test you. That test is sent off to a regulator who scores your test, and you get a certificate. It's like a certificate that lasts 5 years, and you have to do that every 5 years.
And how's the hazmat here?
Oh, the hazmat here is you can go on, you get a book, you read it, and you go to a test center, and then you test on it. But now, because they have entry-level driver training, once you do that, you then go and do another little test with the entry-level drivers training, actually, to get that certification. Or you could go to the entry-level drivers training, do that test, and you say, oh, well, I've done a test for the entry-level drivers training. Then you go to the DOT and you go and do it's like 30 questions they give you, and you've got to get something like 80% of them right. And then that will then go on your driver's license to say you've got that certification. It's a specific alphabetical letter that goes on to say you've got your hazmat and so on.
So basically it's different standards depending on what country you're in, and you've experienced that both. And with that being said, how many hours of driving during training that you have to have before you are let on the road by yourself?
Let me think. Let me think.
And just give us
off the top of my head.
examples. If it's passenger, how
I
many
think it's,
hours do they have to
yeah, I
have?
think they have to
If
have
it's
20
freight,
hours. I think they have to have 20. I think it's 20 hours on the road, 20 hours on the 16 hours in the classroom, something along that. It's something along those lines. From the top of my head, you have to have so many hours of training on the road and so many hours of classroom training.
right? And that goes into that approximately 6 weeks that you told us about. When you're going to be a driver in transportation.
Yeah, you want to get as many hours as you can, as even before you go for your actual physical test. You want as much hours, if not more, on the road as you can.
Can you share with us one of your experiences training? Since we're talking about the requirements for drivers.
It's basically doing classroom training. A lot of it is.
No, give us an example when you actually did it.
Well, it's just
you've done it a lot.
Yeah, but it's standard training. It's basically using slides and explaining what the regulations are, explaining what they need to be doing and what they're not doing now, or what sort of like they fall into pitfalls at certain checks that they may forget if they're rushing, how your vehicle should be set up, what you should look for in a vehicle, especially
so the pre-checks,
your pre-trip and so on.
Oh, okay, pre-trip.
Yeah, and so forth.
I'm still learning the language.
Just regulatory things, safety on the road. Teaching drivers that you need to anticipate other people's mistakes on the road. You're a professional, they're not. Okay, you got a professional certification to drive on the road, whereas a person who drives a car is not a professional on the road. You are. So you have to you have to be aware of the mistakes they're making and make adjustments, because your vehicle is not going to stop as quickly as theirs. So if they overtake you and slam their brakes on, you got to look and say, well, you know what, I got to give them a little bit of distance because my vehicle can't stop behind them as quickly as they can stop in front of me. You just little things, and just being aware of what's around you and making sure that whatever it is that you're transporting is transported safely.
But you also took some of them out on the road for those hours that you were just talking about. So what were some of the things that you were training on when you did the driving aspect of the training?
Kind of like going through a training method called Smith's, making them describe what's around them and what they're looking for when they're looking in their mirrors, what is going on around them.
And this is why you're on the road.
Yeah, what is going on around them, and tell me what the pitfalls are, what you see. What do you see? What are the dangers you see out on the road as you're approaching a junction, as you're going to do a right turn, a left turn, and so forth? What is it that you see in front of you that could be a potential hazard?
Wow. Can you tell us like one of the best stories that you've had in your industry as an executive?
I guess helping someone to get up the ladder, promotions, and nurturing them and mentoring them onto the next level of what that looks like and what they have to be prepared to do, and relationships, how they change in the workforce from being more, you have your friends that you kind of like, you
friends outside of work that you may work with.
And you have to have a different level of friendship inside the business element. Because the business element's all about accountability. So you can't have those sort of relationships while you're managing someone there, because you may well forget that, oh, this is my friend, and I will put my friend's interest first over the business interest, which is not constructive, and it's not allowed.
So tell us what that ladder is, honey. So you said one of your best experiences was helping someone to climb that ladder. So when we're talking about going from being a driver into management, then executive, what you do?
It's basically mentoring them. You have to find out what it is they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to go. And if you want to get up the ladder, you have to recognize, I'll have to break it down into steps, and you will tell me what it is you do on your working day, which I already know, but you'll tell me what it is and what it looks like. And then I'll tell you, right, okay, this is what it looks like now. This is what it's going to look like in the future if you go here, from here to here.
Mm-hmm. And so just like in any field, they may start off as a driver who just has the license and the certification, doesn't have the degree, but then they can work up the ladder into supervisor, into management, and so forth, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to be at director level, you're probably going to need
your degree.
Bachelor,
yeah, at least your bachelor's.
Yeah, you're going to need bachelor's.
But you can be a supervisor or a manager, right? Without it?
Yeah, you can be probably an associate as a manager, supervisor, college, associates as a manager, the directors, them sort of, you're going to need degrees.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure having you back on the show. Do you want me to tell everybody how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, do you want to do it?
No.
Okay, so if you want to reach out, have any questions for Nathan, or just want to pick his brain a little bit more, you can email him at info@whitewarehouseconnectionllc.com. Once again, that's that is info@whitewarehouseconnectionllc.com. You can also visit our business website at www.whitewarehouseconnectionllc.com. Once again, you can visit our website at www.whitewarehouseconnectionllc.com. Well, before we go, can you tell us how to share your story today help others? And then tell us about any of your current or future plans.
What I've basically come out with today that can help others is to, number one, be safe, be aware, and to build those relationships which are business focused. That's the best way. It's a brand image. Whoever you work for is a business, it's a brand. Okay, if you put that to the forefront, safety and the brand to the forefront of everything you do, it could take you places and open doors for you. Because if what I've found in my experience, people that don't have that brand entity about them, you could lose a business multiple contracts. You could lose. You could help a business go into recess instead of going forward. They're going backwards. And big contracts that come available, when it comes to bidding and previous experience from your main contractor, they may well overlook you. So you need to have the right people on board. You need to be in the right frame of mind. And you must be that sort of person to try and push the brand to the next level.
All right. Thank you so much, Nathan, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, everybody. It's been
it's always a pleasure. I love saying that I'm married to a professional driver. All right, so next week, we'll continue to discuss and have conversations about real experiences, personal and professional, stories that need to be shared, seen, and heard that makes us human. The truth will not be silenced. To be seen, to be heard, and to be human. The surprise, if you like or leave a positive comment about this show, you will get a shout out. This includes businesses, products, services, organizations, and events. We want to give some special shout outs to Tyreek Wynn of Wynn Productions and Tamika Walston of Integral Hair Affair for leaving us some positive comments about our show. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyreek, and thank you, Tanika. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and help support our show. Buzzsprout is the best way to launch a professional podcast. Want to ask a question, be a guest, or subscribe to this podcast? The truth will not be silenced. Click on the show link. Thank you so much for joining us.